Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Susan Corbett. I do custom machine quilting. And what I have for you today is a throw. It's pretty simple. The fabric is doing most of the heavy lifting, but there is some space in here for some custom elements that the client has asked for. She brought me some logos and some requests, and so we're going to work those in where we can. A lot of times people bring quilts and they have high hopes for them, and there's no room for the stuff they want to put in. So the room here is in the border, the outer border. And that's pretty much it. So this is a mix of all over quilting, as here in this panel where the fabric is too busy. You're not going to see the quilting anyway. So there's some of that, and then there is computer lettering, which basically is you're setting type. That's a whole topic all by itself. I'm really grateful for the alphabet I bought recently. I've gotten a lot of use out of it, and I suspect I will again. So, okay, what I'm doing right here, after I had stabilized everything, right, I ditch quilted in between all the borders and panels. So I've got the quilt on 2 rollers, not 3 anymore. And now I can hop around from one element to the next. So where did I start? I want to start quilting the elements with the thread I'm going to use the most. There will be 2 or 3 thread changes in this quilt. And most of it will be in gray thread. Because, look at the fabric. The quilting is not going to show. And it doesn't need red thread. Don't get me started. Red needs to be used judiciously, and this is not the place for it. So I'm using a gray Omni polyester thread in here. The all-over design is a freehand loop meander, tightly packed, but the loops are in various sizes. So basically what it is a circle within a circle. And the reason I settled on that is that design kind of reminded me of a buckeye, the nut. So, hey, let's go with that. This is fun to do. It goes really fast. It's meditative. You'll have a great time doing it. It works equally well on a long arm or a domestic machine. In another panel that you'll see a glimpse of later, there's a bunch of lettering and some other logos. And so in there, I chose to outline the print. That went really fast. So that was good. I used 2 gray threads. This one right now is a little bit on the darker side. When I began quilting the border, I switched to a lighter gray. Okay, so here's another reason to start with the gray thread. At this point, I wasn't completely sure what was going to happen in the black borders, but I knew this gray fabric here was not going to be the focus, so I could do something quick. So I'm doing a big meander. I love doing a big meander on sashing. So you see what just happened there in the corner. When you turn the corner, you're not really turning. The same thing is still happening. And that part that corner makes me a little bit nervous. Is it going to hit in the right way, or is it going to be short? And I usually luck out. So when I get to the corner, I like to stop and think about it and think how many repeats are there going to be, and is it going to fall right in that corner pocket? And I lucked out. It kind of did. So, this is some fast quilting. What I liked about this quilt is some parts were really fast, and that left me room for other parts that were extremely slow and painstaking. So here's where I turned. Can you see what just happened there? This is the middle, which I've marked with a pen. That's where you change directions to get this right corner that'll come up here in a while to work. And you'll see that I'm quilting the horizontal border now. There's an adjoining vertical border, and I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work out. Sometimes you can make these patterns join up, but this is not one of those. You know, where they would connect. They're not going to connect this time. And the other thing is, I've already quilted all of this except this bottom part. So now, see, I'm quilting backwards, and I've got to make sure that the join is gonna work out. So that's where you have to stop and think. Years ago, I had a math teacher who told me, you don't do math, but I think you do math on a whole different spatial, visual level. Because I'm eyeballing it, and it just more often than not just works out. And that one pretty much just did. I can't really explain it. It's a visual thing. So here, you know, I quilted that vertical part down as far as I could before I had to stop and advance the quilt some. So I stopped there, and here I'm resuming. And so here is what's happening at the end of that row. I decided I'm just going to ditch quilt in there so that seam gets quilted down, and that's totally okay. This part of the quilt is not going to get hardly any attention. You're really not going to notice it. It's a spacer between the showier parts. Okay, changing tack. I said earlier that the border was where all the space was. I mean, look at the fabric. It's a solid, it's a light color. That's where you put your fancy stuff that's going to show up. So I did an Ohio State quilt for a client, for the same client a long time ago, two or 3 years. And we went all out. We loaded it up with Ohio State stuff right and left. But there was a lot more room in that quilt. So I think I had something like this in that quilt. I went online and looked up Ohio State traditions and logos and that kind of thing. And I found this Ohio. It's the word that's outlined. I couldn't find anything that was already digitized that the computer could do for me. And so I'm back to my old-fashioned trick here. I mean, I could have gone all out and had one digitized for me, but this is someone else's artwork. It's not mine. And we've already got a copyright problem happening here. I think my saving grace, if there is one, is that this design is not going to look on this quilt the way it does in real life because of the colors. You know, I mean, that's a typographical product. This is quilting. So it's just going to look different automatically. I copied that design. I enlarged it. I made a line drawing out of it. I traced it onto this tracing paper, and I've pinned it onto the quilt, and I'm quilting directly on top of the tracing paper. And this is with a darker color thread. It's not dark gray, but it's not a matching gray. And I did that on purpose because I want it to show up. We don't do all this work to have it be invisible. So this involved a lot of stops and starts. This is very, very, very custom work. The only thing more custom would be is if I had designed my own logo. And I don't think I'll ever use this again. But that's what I said on the last quilt. I didn't expect her to bring another one. And this quilt will be a gift. So we're opting for the special touches, but we're not going completely all out over the whole thing. My plan was, okay, you see how this Ohio was pretty stylized. You got to help it along. And my plan for that was to fill in inside of the part I'm doing right now, fill in the backgrounds of it with some dense quilting to sculpt out the word. And I did this with this color thread, and it was horrible. It looked really bad. So I picked all of that out, and I went back and re-quilted it in a lighter gray, and it looks a lot better. So after we get this part in there, then we have to get the paper out. And that's everybody's least favorite part. When people bring me paper pieced quilts, there's always some paper left in the exact spaces where I need them to be gone. And nobody wants to tear it out because it's a royal pain and they're afraid it's going to rip out all their stitches, but the paper needs to come out. And here, none of the paper can remain. That's just not going to work at all. So here's what that looks like. The flimsier your tissue paper is, I think the better. This paper has some body, so it was a little bit of work to get it out. The saving grace here is that it's small. There's not a lot of it to do. So yes, I'm taking the risk of using those really sharp, pointy scissors because I'm not afraid of pulling out paper, and I know what to do and what not to do. I'm not going to rip the fabric. Once you get going, it's not that hard. See how a lot of it just volunteers to come up? And other parts really won't. This client, thankfully, washes her quilts before she gives them away. I love that. I wish more people would do that. So many people are not willing at all to put any water on their quilt. And really, by the time especially if you applique, by the time the quilt is quilted and done, it needs washing. Think how much it's been handled, And if there is going to be a problem with fabric bleed, you want to get that worked out before you saddle the recipient with that kind of an issue. Because really the non-quilting public is going to dry clean it or something. I mean, they're going to wash it. If they're like me, wow, I machine washed and dried a quilt my grandmother gave me a couple times. And it looks like it was made in 1603. It really destroyed the quilt. This quilt has plenty of quilting. It's not going to disintegrate or anything. And the reason I bring up washing is if there are any teeny tiny bits left over of paper left in here that I can't get out with tweezers or something, then washing it is going to dissolve that paper and help it fall away. So that's a really good idea. This is not fun, but there's lots of parts of quilting that aren't fun. I think most of us probably don't love binding or I don't know, whatever. The whole project can't be rip-roaring fun, can it? It's best to do it. It's faster to do it than to complain about it and then do it. See, I think this is coming out really fast. I'm very pleased with this. I haven't tweezed hardly anything here, have I? That's going to be really cool. So what other things like this went in this quilt? There's a little character. There's a little Buckeye figure named Brutus. So I found a line drawing of it, and I made I enlarged that. I got it to be the right size. Here he is. And So that looks really different in the quilt. And this, they make these, well, okay. Well, that kind of showed you what that's going to be. So I'm just finishing up. I traced these guys onto tissue paper and pinned them on and quilted on the line I had drawn in pencil. And then I went back in and added some little bitty swirls in here to kind of sculpt them out. I think that looks good. I've got these big old spaces that needed something, so I've just been filling in with some diagonal lines, some channel quilting. I changed to a matching thread color because I don't really want these to be prominent, and a straight line is always going to show up anyway. I didn't want to quilt all the way to the ditch because I didn't want to travel here with a contrasting thread on black fabric. So I've stopped short of it. This reminds me of something, but I can't figure out what exactly. I've got football field on the brain. I don't know. And I'm on the fence whether to fill in any of this. I kind of think I won't. Okay. Over here, I had a pretty straight regular space to fill under the letters. But on this side, it'll be a little bit different. And up at the top, I ran into the same situation. So I'll show you how I'm handling those differences. I'm just eyeballing the increments here, not being very precious about it. So to come all the way down, I'm going to be getting really close to that Y. So I don't think I am going to come all the way down. I don't know if that's right or wrong,
but that's what's happening there. And here's what's happening in the sashing. I'm using a contrasting thread. I've done shallow arcs. Here I've done the math. I'm using rulers. I'm making double lines and then going back and doing a little pattern meander in between. So here is what that process looks like.
So the concept is get out your rulers, do some ruler work, and then fill in with a pattern meander. And this can work on any number of borders. The wider the border, the more possibilities you have. This is just what happened here, and I think it's pretty good. I like it.
I put pins every 4 inches instead of marking. And I can quilt right over these pins. I've never had a problem. And I did do the math, but I'm not being very super precise about it. They're going to look like they're all the same size.
You could also mark with a white chalk pencil, but then you have to get the mark out.
I will turn that corner when I turn the quilt. Now here at the corner, I can't do a 4-inch increment or then I'll have to figure out what to do with that square. So I'm changing rulers and switching to an arch guide. And then going back to the 4-inch increment.
I like being able to put that ruler right on top of those pins because they have flat heads.
Now for the echoes. And now we'll fill in with the pattern meander. This is interesting. Notice what happens when you get to a really narrow space. You get shorter and wider, and then the more room you have, you can go back to elongated and much more vertical. This is nice and filled in, but it doesn't use up so much thread that it's laborious or very time consuming. And what does this have to do with the university? It's not one of their motifs, but there's a whole lot of that already in the quilt. This part doesn't need anything more. So this is a quilting design. Usually the rounded part of this shape here goes right in that center, but sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. I'm of course trying to quilt inside the lines, but there are going to be little mistakes here and there. For the most part, I think it's pretty darn good. This guy is the little mascot. His name is Brutus. I found a motif online. I copied it and made a line drawing out of it and then quilted along those lines. It doesn't exactly look like him, but the recipients are going to know what that is. And so on these two long gray borders, I've used the varsity letters alphabet that I got from Intelligent Quilting. And so here, these big letters say Go Buckeyes. Isn't that really good looking? And then on the other side, it says Ohio State University in smaller letters because there were so many of them. So now I'll turn the quilt and finish up. So now let's turn a corner. The math was dicey here. This is sort of 4 inches, but not quite. But close enough.
It's nice to be able to quilt in both directions. Like it's nice to make a feather from the bottom up or from the top down. This whole process of this border design was pretty laborious, from finding a design in the first place to getting the sizing correct. So any little thing to speed up the process is a welcome notion. So once I got that last double line put in, it was expedient to just start filling in with the pattern meander, in this case from right to left. you're about to turn the corner here, we did earlier, and when you're first learning how to do this kind of thing, it's scary to freehand anything in a corner when you have to change directions. So this is best worked out on paper way ahead of time so that you teach your brain what the design needs to look like and what it needs to do. It's nerve-wracking to do it in real time with red thread on black fabric, but it works.
Here's a little Ohio. I had these holes filled in with this darker gray thread, and it looked pretty bad. So I picked all that out and used this thread in here just to sculpt out the letters. Okay, and I've switched back to the red thread now to add. Apparently it's a big deal in Ohio to dot the I. So I'm going to fill in here with a red dot.
And here's a look at the back, a busy print that's going to obscure a lot of the quilting, but that's okay. I think this turned out pretty good. I'm sure the recipient is going to be very happy with it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see what I have for you next time.